So welcome to MLS Monday. We got people still jumping in, but we're going to get started today. First off, kind of exciting. It's our first one we've done here at the new office on 41. So as many of you may know, we moved out of the Winkler office that sold and closed a few weeks ago, and here in our new office on 41. So exciting. It's our first MLS Monday we've done with really having it here. So today we're going to talk about a lot of things and unpack a lot of stuff coming off of the Florida Realtor Conference, which happened last week. Joanna and I were both up there. We'll give you some insight to that today, as well as some NAR lawsuits. We're past the 17th, obviously going in here in really week number 2 of the settlement and post-settlement rules being in place. So we're going to unpack that a little bit today, and then we're going to talk about some tools that are out there that we brought on board that you'll see announcements of, but you'll be the first ones that will have seen the tools here live, or the tool here live as well. So we'll start out with a kind of a recap of the Florida Realtor Conference. You know, convention's always a great time for Florida Realtors, and coming off of the NAR settlement and implementing these rules, the timing was perfect. Obviously, a lot of the conversation and topics were around the lawsuit, including the MLS Administrators Committee I went to. And a lot of this general sessions were talking about this. So, and I got to get a flavor of what the other MLSs are doing. There were almost 30 MLSs represented in the meeting I sat through. And then on Sunday or Saturday, we had the leadership forum, which we then also spoke about that. Deanna Hall from the Beaches MLS and myself were the speakers. We spoke on kind of what we're doing to help our members with the post MLS kind of the shift and change. And honestly, we haven't had a bigger change to our business. You know, I was in the business for 20 years here locally, and we haven't had a change in that business like this in a long time. So to kind of unpack, anything you want to add on the actual convention conference? Any other takeaways that you had?
No, I think just talking to a lot of members there, everybody's kind of getting used to the change. It's been business as usual for a lot of people. Everyone's pivoting really well. And, you know, we woke up on the 17th, we're all still here. Business is still going. And I think that's the positive thing to focus on.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. That's kind of was the messaging was, you know, houses are still going pending. Deals are still being had. It kind of feels like, you know, the first time you rode a bike without training wheels, right? So
a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, we'll continue to do some things to help with that. So we did last week before we left, so 2 weeks ago, we did classes. I believe it was on Wednesday. We did a live 2-hour class. We had a full room at Cape, and then we did a 2-hour webinar in the afternoon from 2 to 4, which is always, it's a different vibe when you're online, obviously, like we are today, just a different vibe, but those both went really well, and we'll continue those. You will be seeing, we've updated our MLS Mondays, so that's scheduled to go out in the next 48 hours.
Yep.
We also have a class coming on the 23rd of September that should be live by the end of this week.
Cynthia DeLuca.
Cynthia DeLuca. It's 4 hours CE. We're doing something different for the members. It's going to be almost a full day. It's a 4-hour CE class. We're going to provide breakfast at a country club. So we're not going to do it in the Ed Center. We want to open this up to have as many people come. We'll have a full breakfast at a country club, buffet style, and then you'll be able to sit with what we're going to call breakfast with the experts. So you'll have your board of directors there, assigned to tables. Joanna and I will be there assigned to tables. And then you'll have Cynthia DeLuca and some other experts we're going to invite from around the area to have that conversation at breakfast, and then dive into some opening statements, then into the presentation from like 9 until 1.
What's the class actually called? Post NAR lawsuit.
It's all post NAR lawsuit. Yeah, it's navigating through post NAR lawsuit. In fact, we're the first organization to hire her on this class. It just got a
new class.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. So no, you can't get this class anywhere else as of right now. So It just got approved, and it's all about navigating post NAR settlement, and it's got the 4-hour CE. And then we're doing a bonus section after that. So from 9 to 1, you'll have your 4-hour CE. And then we'll do a 30-minute Q&A with myself, Sean O'Brien, our CEO, and another expert or two are bringing over to have some of that kind of candid Q&A afterwards. But after 1 o'clock, anybody wants to leave can leave, and then we'll take it back on the Q&A. So
that will also be live in the next 48 hours. So that's not up on the dashboard yet, but that will be up in the next 2 days.
Yeah, and honestly, the only thing we're waiting for right now, folks, is the actual contract from the venue. So we got the speaker, we signed the contract, paid her, we're good to go. So that will be coming. And then we have ABR, which is going to be the 10th and 11th of October.
And what does ABR stand for?
Accredited Buyer Representation. Yes. Accredited Buyer Representation. So things to look will be back for that. We took our last 2 dates on our calendar for 2024. And that will be a great deal. I think, do we have that up yet?
That will be up today.
That'll be up today. So that will be up. So some good things coming for members. We want you guys to be educated, which is why all of you have joined us today. So with that being said, let's kind of unpack some of the NAR settlements.
Yeah.
We've taken a lot of calls. Just to put it in perspective, last week ending on the week before last, which was the first week we had of the settlement, we had 1,280 phone calls come in just to the multiple listing service.
Yeah.
And we want to address some of the questions that we're getting. So that's kind of the first part of this, and we'll just have a conversation over it. But really, the NAR lawsuit is very simple. Although it's 108 pages, the ruling, the 2 business changes that we have, the 2 rules we've changed, right? The settlement change was 1, you cannot take a customer past the threshold of a property, so showing a property, without a written buyer agreement. Now, Florida Realtors has provided a lot of forms regarding this. They've got a showing agreement, they got a buyer broker agreement, etc. And the reason for this change is that this ends up being your employment contract with your buyer. So you're asking them to employ you as a buyer's rep, which is, some people have never done this, and others, as myself, 13 years, used an active buyer rep and do a buyer consultation like you would a listing presentation, and have them sign an employment contract hiring you to be their realtor. Sometimes people complain about, agents complain about, well, my buyer's not faithful, they're not loyal to me. And some of that comes from,
buyers are liars.
Right. And some of that comes from, for me, having that employment contract is like, it's like you would hire an attorney or you hire another professional. It's like, here's the services I'm going to provide you, including my fiduciary, right, of what that is, whether you're a single agent transaction broker. And here's what I expect from you as the buyer. And by the way, here's my fee structure and how I get paid.
Yeah, I think it's huge transparency, and a lot of those conversations weren't being had before.
Correct. Yeah. So you're getting hired to work for that person. And so that's new to us, right? A lot of agents didn't do that. Like I said, we're continuing to do classes on it. We did a live demo on Wednesday.
And there are a huge amount of recordings. If you're still stuck on the buyer broker agreement part, or maybe you haven't been able to make it into one of our classes, if you go to floridarealtors.org, right there, the front banner, they have the NAR settlement lawsuit resources, has a whole bunch of other stuff in there, but there are a bunch of recordings from your chief legal counsel, Joanna Watkins. They've got all of those recordings up there for you guys to learn more about the buyer broker agreements.
Good point. So that part's new. We've never had, a lot of agents have never had somebody hire them on an employment contract, have that level of transparency with the consumer. So that part's new. The other change of business practice is we took on August 1st, as many of you know, we took the commissions out of the MLS. So people are like, well, why would we do that? Why, right? So that they felt when they did the lawsuit, and the DOJ got involved in some of this a while back as well, is that when they pulled 10,000 listings, there was a common denominator of offer compensation. They felt it was price fixing. They felt there was no ability to negotiate those. So they said, take them out of there, right? Now, that does not mean that a seller can't offer a co-broke. It doesn't mean that a seller has to offer a co-broke. They just simply cannot be displayed in the multiple listing service anywhere. So we took commissions out. We rewrote a rule. I think those rules are up on the MLS dashboard now.
Yeah. When you guys sign in, there's a beautiful little pop-up that everybody loves.
Yeah, the pop-ups. So,
Pop-ups.
but we've got, so that's there. But, you know, people say, well, that's lack of transparency. Well, it's really not, because the only people that saw that was the realtor.
Right.
Right.
And that's where the DOJ or the people in the settlement had a problem with it, right? We had the information just kept to ourselves.
Right. And that was part of it. So now you've got this, you know, you got no commissions in there. So, you know, again, everything's negotiable. So a lot of people are, you know, writing contracts and they're including one of two documents with that. So you've got three ways to get paid. Actually, you got 4 ways to get paid. Right? So you've got, if I'm offering you you know, compensation as a co-broke, whatever that number may be, it's gonna be seller broker to the buyer broker compensation, and it should go on that form. Okay. And all of these forms are in form simplicity currently. So it's selling broker to buyer broker. That means there's a co-broke involved. And we'll talk about how to find out what those are in a minute. Then you've got, so if you call up the agent and they say, well, I'm not offering a co-broke, my seller's not offering a co-broke, then you're gonna get your compensation from the seller, right, to the buyer's broker. Oh, and that would also be true as if you ever worked for sale by owners, which I did a ton back in when the market was crazy, nobody was shopping for sale by owners. That's the document you'd use, and it wasn't around back then. We used what we called a one-time showing agreement, which said, if I show your house one time to this customer, you are going to pay me a commission for that if I got a successful sale. So this kind of goes in hand with that. So it's seller to buyer broker, and that would be on that form. The third way to get paid is by doing a seller concession. That would go from the seller to the buyer, and that simply would go on the contract. And the reason why your commissions don't go on the contract is because that is between you and either the seller or you and the selling broker. It's not has to do with either party in the actual transaction. But a concession does. So it would go from seller to buyer, and then you would basically get part of that or all of it, depending on what your buyer broker agreement is. So those are the ways to get paid. Obviously, the fourth way is actually from your buyer, and people say, well, my buyer wouldn't pay me. People that used this before had a fee set up, and they would say, my fee is X. Anything that's on MLS, most of that we picked up from a buyer or a listing agent compensation. If it's not, you're going to pay the delta, the difference between what my is X and what they're paying Y. You're responsible for the difference. And there were people out there that do pay. Okay. And sometimes we get in our own head going, well, nobody's going to pay for our services. Well, you know, this is a shift, not even locally, statewide, but nationally on how people get paid. And we always get the comments in classes and on phone calls from agents and brokers alike saying, well, you know, the news media is having this slanted the wrong way, right? Whether you listen to CNN or Fox News or whoever, MSNBC, they all got it wrong. And they do. I mean, we watched a deal that came out on the 16th. It's a news clip that's out there. You can Google it. It was the Today Show, and they had an expert on there talking about this. And they said, well, housing prices are going to come down, and sellers no longer have to pay a buyer's rep to sell their house, and commissions are now in half. They're split in half now. They're half the price to sell your home, which is not necessarily the case. So the piece of advice I've been giving to everybody is you really need to be the conduit. You need to be the educator to whether you're working with buyers or sellers, right? Because sellers are still paying compensation. We're seeing it. You know, we're seeing it, we're hearing it, we're talking to people. They're still paying a seller's, you know, a co-broke, if you will, with buyer's agents. It's still happening. I talked to a broker on Friday that is a selling broker, and he just got paid a commission, you know, he's getting paid a commission on a deal. And it's all concession, right? And the buyer was fine with signing it. And, you know, as long as the buyer's like, as long as you give me a house and I don't have to come more than $4,000 towards your commission, I'm good.
Mhm.
And he was able to get all of it from the actual seller. So those are those pieces there, kind of where we're at.
So can you talk to a little bit the commissions, right? So every association is building out rules around the commissions. They're not allowed in the MLS. Can you talk a little bit about what we are allowing, what we're working towards allowing
Yep.
to help them
So,
out?
so we're staying away from any words commission or compensation in the MLS anywhere. We don't like that word.
So that would mean property description, confidential remarks. Obviously, the boxes were removed, so you can't put it there, but you can't force it into any other feature either.
Right. Yeah, and I had a conversation with some people last week. I said, we're not moving what we're told to leave out. We were told to leave out compensation and commissions on the MLS, take it out. We're not even asked to, we're told to. We're not pushing that, moving it to some other creative place.
Mhm.
So, confidential comments, property description, driving directions, you can't have it anywhere. And I would not use, absolutely not use word compensation commission, because that is negotiable and it has to be off MLS, which means it's not connected to anything that we currently offer you. You can't put in your showing time instructions. You can't put it in, you got to keep it off there. And it's, when you look at it, you're like, well, I want people to know I'm offering it. So we do have ways to do that. We'll get into it. Yes, you do. But I'm going to tell you from the conversations I've had in real life,
Mhm.
they're not even calling the agents when they're doing a showing. And I had somebody say, well, they did the showing and showing time. Do I still need to offer what's in my co-broke from my seller that signed a listing agreement if they didn't call and ask me for the commission?
It's in your agreement.
It's in your agreement. So do the right thing and pay it. But she said, well, they didn't even care. They didn't even know. I said, did they write an offer? She said, yeah. Well, what was the offer? And they said, well, seller broker paid buyer broker X%. I said, is that covered in your listing agreement? She said, yeah. What's the problem? I don't need to call you to ask you what you're giving if I know I can negotiate it.
Mhm.
I don't need that. I think the fear is, I think people are saying, we're paying, and I hate this word, we're paying a full commission. What does that mean? Do we ever just
What's
pay
a
a
full
half a commission, right? What is that? But we're paying commission, come show my house. This is part of the marketing strategy and the idea of the MLS, guys, is you have one house out of 8,000 listings, right? But you have 10,000 people looking at those 8,000 listings. It truly is the biggest open marketplace and marketing tool you can have is in the MLS.
Mhm.
But when people get used to this, they're not going to worry about what you're offering. All right. So with that being said, let's get into what we are allowing. We are allowing you to talk about concessions. You can put in there 2 words, concessions negotiable, right? That's what the board agreed to. Concessions negotiable. Concessions, folks, have always been negotiable. I remember taking on a house, beautiful, gorgeous house, that the lady was a widow and she had 4 cats. And you cannot smell cat pee through a picture. So I put in there, flooring allowance of whatever we offered, like $3,000. I knew that was going to be an issue on a contract. So you can put in, if you have an allowance specifically for something, again, not commissions, not compensation. If you've got a condition in the home, that they still have hurricane damage in the overhang in the front foyer. You can say $4,000, not percentages, for the foyer. I've got estimates attached as a supplement. That's very explainable. And so when you look at this, when people try to get creative, it never ends well for them. What I always look at, and when my team comes to me and says, what about this and what about that? We're seeing this, we're seeing that. Is it defendable? Right? So I can defend a $4,000 fascia allowance to the DOJ. Is it hiding something else? Are we switching out the C word of commission compensation to concession? That's not, number one, if that's a yes, it is switching it out, then no, I cannot defend it, right? So that's a no. So I go through this process in my mind going, when I look at every one of these is, are they trying to switch out C words, compensation, commission to concession? And is it defendable? If they're not trying to switch out a C word and it's defendable, that's fine. It goes to the third test. That third test to me is, was this always part of organized real estate? So the lady with the 4 cats and the picture, you can't smell pee through it, that was always done in real estate. That's nothing different that we started doing post-settlement, right? I did that in 2011. So that hasn't changed. So is it something we've always done? Right? So you have a house that goes on the marketplace. There's a inspection done. It comes back. It's got a faulty flux capacitor, right? Which is from Back to the Future. It's really not a real thing.
I know.
So, well, I don't know. I mean, so it's got a faulty flux capacitor. So you put in there $3,000 to buy a new flux capacitor. Okay. As long as it really is a flux capacitor and it's not compensation or commission, it's okay.
Yeah.
So again, don't get cute with it. I can tell you that we're not the only MLS out there fining with that as well. So concessions negotiable, not an issue. You can also do a URL.
Okay.
What were you gonna say?
Closing costs. is the
Closing
other question
costs,
we get a
yeah,
lot
closing
of.
costs of prepaids are okay.
Mhm.
But we're allowing now for the first time ever, for you to put in there, a URL, which is a website, right? That website, now it's something that Naples has done for a long time in their MLS, something that Stellar has done in their MLS. That website, cannot be less than 3 clicks away. They say less than 2 clicks, but I say 3 clicks. So the rule is 2 clicks away. I'll explain that, so I'm not confusing people. Because number one, you can't click on a confidential comment URL.
No, it
You gotta
doesn't
copy
make
and
it
paste it.
hyperlink.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
You
no
gotta
hyperlink.
copy and paste it in URL. So I copy and paste
That's 1 click.
Jason Jacobs sells paradise, and I put it in Chrome, and it comes up my beautiful website. That's 1 click. On that page cannot be any compensation, any,
The data of compensation and commission, however.
correct.
You can have the word commission or compensation, right?
You can't have the
So I
actual,
can say commission here, so that you can
correct.
click.
You say find commissions here, find compensation here, click. That's your second click.
Mhm,
Or you can have it attached to the house. So you attach it to the house,
mhm.
they pull up the house on the bottom, you've got compensation. Again, I think as we go through this, we've only been now 9 days since the
Mhm.
settlement. We've taken commissions out, by the way, though, for 26 days.
Yeah.
People are figuring out they don't need to know what your commission is. I promise you, they don't. They're doing what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
And they're gonna send you things. In fact, one of the calls this morning, I was on the phone with before this call, lady was mad because she's asking basically for X, and that's all that the listing agreement allots for. And it's her listing side, and she said, can they do that? I basically don't get paid on this. I said, well, X is for your side, for your listing side. They need to negotiate the buyer side. Your seller needs to know your X is covered already. You signed an agreement. This is an additional X.
Mhm.
So people are already doing what they're gonna do and negotiate, which is what they're supposed to be doing. But you can have 2 clicks, not less. 1 click, copy paste, Jason Jacobs sells paradise. Next click would be compensation here, could be the property to wherever, and then it's actually displayed there. That's permissible. On the website itself. I thought I heard the thing come up for a question. No questions?
Nope.
No, okay.
Not yet.
So that is permissible. You can put the 2 clicks, the 2-click rule. I think it's and by the way, we were actually given clarification here because the way the FAQ is says it cannot be 1 click away. So everybody's saying that's a 2-click rule.
Mhm.
The word 2-click is never in the FAQ from NAR.
No, that's what we've decided.
Yeah, that's what we've decided. So that's a new rule. Now I'll tell you this too. Verbiage is being presented to the board of directors on Thursday on this.
Mhm.
It's not out there. You guys know about it. It's fine. But if somebody called you from compliance and said you can't have it in there, you can't have it in there.
I also hate that we have to have this conversation, but the websites that you guys are building for it, please do not label your websites commissionrates.com, commissionhere.com, commissionsplit.com, buyer commission. Don't make your website any of those words because they're not allowed in the confidential comments.
Yeah, if you did that, you just shot yourself in the foot and wasted domain name.
Yeah. Like Jason said, don't be cute.
Don't be cute.
Yeah.
Don't be cute. It just,
Don't say click here for commissions. The conversation of commission can't start in the MLS. It's not just about the data. We can't be the streaming point for that information, which is why there's the 2-click rule, which is why we say don't put the words in the URL. The question that we're getting a lot in MLS is, can I say buyer agents welcome, or we're friendly with buyers agents? And, they're nodding off to the fact that they're going to offer compensation and commission. And, every time we say no, it's like, well, I didn't put the number in there. I didn't say commission. The conversation itself cannot start in MLS.
Right, and I got a lot of friends that sell real estate in Southwest Florida, and all over the country for that fact. And I've had conversation with them in my role, about this, and I will say this, and I'll accept the hate mail, on this, but, houses sell because somebody saw it and fell in love with it, right? If there's a role, there's a way, and people are talking about the conversations last week at convention. Was great talking to real estate agents throughout Florida saying, they're negotiating their own deal, they're getting houses sold. In fact, the stuff that's impeding homes from selling is not that there's no commission there. Before I left last week, Monday, had a call from a member that said, my house hasn't sold. I think it's because you guys took commissions out. And I'm like, no, because you've had the house on the market for 197 days. It had the ability to have a buyer for 190 of those days, and nobody put an offer on it. It's not, you can't blame that as the reason that your house isn't selling. If it's priced right, it's marketed well, you've got a good description, you're using RESTB.AI to do your photos, your descriptions and meta tags, and you market it right, and it's not one picture in the dark with your finger in it, or 2 sentences. If you're marketing it right, that's going to sell. If it's priced way, it's going to sell it. You guys will figure out the compensation and who gets paid how during the deal. So we did comparison internally from the last couple of weeks to last year at this time. Granted, this is a election year. For some reason, people put their lives on pause. We see it every election year in the numbers. So we're talking numbers only. It's not an emotional thing. And we are not far off of where we were last year. And it's an election year from pending since we took the commissions out. So we're not seeing anything. Joanna Watkins gave an update at the public policy meeting I sat on Saturday, and she said something I thought was pretty profound. She said, we're seeing some great traction with the contracts we put out. We're seeing a lot of usage on those contracts that we put out, the buyer agreements, the compensation agreements. They're looking at it from a different lens, but it's showing that business is not stopping from that. So again, we're looking at pictures, we're looking at the attachments, we're looking at all the data. We'll make sure everybody's got in our job, and I know it's, if somebody does something wrong, they're upset about it, but we want an even playing field to treat everybody equitably, and address all the issues out there, that if there are compensation in there, people are hiding it and putting, 12 pickles on the jar and putting it in the picture, whatever, that we're addressing those, and we're getting aggressive with it. But it's not the game that we want to play. Like, we're not in the game of finding people. It's one of the things I've always talked about, is that we're not here to find people. We're here to help enhance your business.
All right, we've got a question here. Exclusive buyer broker agreement, section 3 property. If I am showing 4 properties, can I put the first line single family homes and second line put homes in Cape Coral or Lake County? So I'm going to assume section 3 is the part where it says type of property, and you always speak to this in the buyer broker agreement class, the best way to cover your butt and cover everything.
Yeah, so and again, I'm not your attorney, not your broker, not your therapist. But what I always tell people is, you can be as vague as you want to be. We all know, you take somebody out looking at single family, like, well, who's gonna cut my grass and who's gonna do my pool? And oh, by the way, a townhouse is better for me. So I would put this, I would just put residential in the property type. Yeah, and you can be as general as you want. If you know they want to be in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, you can put that. You're also covered by putting Southwest Florida. Somebody the other day put Florida in theirs. It's up to what you feel comfortable with.
Buyers change their mind.
Buyers do change their mind, and you don't want to go back and have to modify your agreement. They do change their mind. They may find that perfect house in new construction, right? And totally pivot and change, and now it's something totally different. So yeah, it's okay to be residential. If they'll get for lot and land, there's that.
So now that we've talked about all the changes, the rules, all the not fun stuff, you want to move into what we're bringing them from MLS to kind
Yep.
of enhance what we've got moving forward?
Yep, go ahead and pull up and share your screen there. So we got a couple of really cool things that are happening. And so you guys should see our screen now. This is pretty cool. So if you go to our dashboard, I just want to give a shout out real quick as we go here. At the bottom, you see a thing called Cubicasa. If you haven't used it yet, use it. This is a new service that we just implemented the month of, I think it came in August, end of July.
Yep, so they did a presentation. I think I see a lot of familiar names. Most of you guys were here with us 2 weeks ago, and we will also have them doing a presentation next month.
Perfect. All right, so that's my shout out to Cubicasa. All right, so Agent 3000, which has been a partner with us, vendor for us for a long time. They got a lot of great tools. If you haven't been in this, I would highly recommend. A lot of the stuff is already, we're paying for it for you. There is an upgrade version if you do a website with them, but most of the stuff they have here is going to be 100% included in your membership with the MLS. So this is a buyer registration page. So the idea behind this is that you can register your buyers. If people are, I'm always somebody that wants to dot their I's and cross their T's. So if I was practicing real estate, I would use this and put my information in here because you'll be able to see it. And you've got your different broker agreements here, non-exclusive showing agreement only. So
What do you want to do?
do exclusive. You can put agreement date in there. So put today's date, 26, expiration date.
I'll make it for a couple of days.
Okay. So this down here is kind of cool. So searchable means that other Agent 3000 members can search for that buyer.
But it's not going to give all of your cards away. Right?
It's not. We'll show you on this. We'll do yes searchable on there. But the idea behind this is that if somebody's going out an open house, they're going to give their phone number or email to be able to look them up, and it'll tell them that they're working with you. Some people like that idea of having that, and some people don't. But for me, using this as an agent, somebody calls and says, hey, you showed houses at this location. I've got the buyer agreement stuff. I've registered them. It's easy to prove. I've got a buyer's agreement, and I send the buyer's agreement. For brokers, this is a great way. The brokers will have a bird's eye view of their entire office. So brokers could implement this in their office and actually, look at it to make sure that if Joanna went out 13 times showing houses last week, there's only one buyer broker agreement. Was that 13 houses? Were that all one person or whatever? And all of a sudden she turns in 4 contracts and she only got one person registered as a broker. And we're like, okay, Joanna, where are these other 3 buyer broker agreements? Or the one buyer buy 4 houses?
Yeah. So we got a lot of different brokerages that are implementing this as a standard. They're using this tool to keep track of everything. So, a lot of brokerages use different things like app files and programs like that. Trying to go in there and look at what agreements they have, and going in through paperwork is a lot of work. This is a really great way to kind of create a short, almost Excel spreadsheet of what you have going on to keep your agents in check.
Right.
Or, if it's just you, your team, it'll help you keep yourself in check as well.
Yeah. So if you go to search all registration on the left-hand side, if you're sitting in an open house, somebody comes in and says, are you working with a current representative? Yeah, I am. What's their name?
So talk a bit about why we chose these 2 features for the searchable content. You can only search by phone number or email.
Yeah, so we went back and forth. We've been working on this development since April. So the idea is because 7-digit phone numbers are very unique. That there's only one possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So if they really are working with somebody, you get their phone number or email address, right? There's only one email address out there. For they don't let you do duplicate Gmail accounts or duplicate whatever.
Yeah.
So it's very unique identifier to that person, and I'm not able then just to put and throw in all my contacts or look up a name and be the wrong person, right? Or some of that nature.
You really truly have to be working with them, and you have to fill out this entire thing. You can't put 239 star and pull up all 239 numbers. Then they can come through here and try to find out who are interested buyers or anything like that. So in here, you would fully have to type it out.
Right. So it's going to show it, customer's name, they're active. Now that will go inactive if the settlement date expires.
Yeah.
So
I set it to what, Monday?
Yeah.
So Monday, this will show expired.
Yeah. So if you go in there on Tuesday, it'll say expired on it, which means it's not an active agreement, right? So also for procuring cause and all those types of things, you know, it's gonna give you an extra tool. We wanted something out there to look at. We don't have access to this. We'd have to get it from the vendor if we're gonna look at something. Somebody says, Joanna showed a house, a buyer agreement. We're gonna call Joanna, go send us your buyer agreement.
Mhm.
You know, we've got, you know, we'll follow that, keep it on file, but, you know, I thought this was gonna be a great addition to what we have out there. There's talks, kind of behind the scenes, Florida Realtor is gonna do something like this. I did show them what this looks like, and, you know, they were super excited about it, so.
Yeah. So
it-
if you do put your people in here, though, you can see at the end, the contact information that it's going to provide other agents is the agent contact information.
Mhm.
So if I walk into Jason's open house and he says, you have a buyer broker agreement, I say, no, I'm just, you know, just shopping. And he takes out my phone number, he looks me up and he sees I'm active, he can say, well, you know, it looks like you are working with somebody, or he could reach out to the agent that it's registered with, which for this example, it's myself, but they could reach out to that agent and say, hey, are you working with this person? You know, it says that they are, but it's not giving away any important information of the client. It's just giving them the agent information.
Right. Exactly.
Let's see, we've got a question in here. If I have a listing and an interested buyer reaches out to me about viewing the home, it's my understanding that I can show them the home as I represent the seller, and it is part of my duties, but prior to discussing details, I need the buyer agreement signed. There is so much talk about what can and can't be done.
So this is your own listing about viewing the homes. Understand that I can show the home as I represent the seller as part of my duties, but prior to.
So I think the confusing part here is you're applying the rule for open houses. So if you or
Yeah.
somebody in your office is doing an open house, the open houses don't have to have the buyer broker agreements because you're representing the seller, right? But if you're gonna take somebody on a private showing, your intent there is to also be working with the buyer. So the buyer broker or the buyer agreement would need to.
Correct. Yeah, so you're there, your duties as a listing agent, yes, but yeah, to your point, Joanna, that if I'm a listing agent, I get a signed call and they're like, hey, I want to see this, it's a private showing, we're crossing the threshold, I'm gonna let them know I need the one-time showing agreement. Now, the advantage you have as a transaction broker, in my mind, is that you know if there's a co-broke on it, you know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
And you've already are working for that seller, so you're probably not gonna ask for more than that's on there. And you can tell them this is completely covered by the co-broke. I'm doing a selling broker to buyer broker agreement for compensation. It's already covered in the contract. You're not gonna be on the hook on it. And I would do the one-time showing agreement for that particular house. So there was a lot of conversation around, and again, not to ruffle feathers, but a lot of conversation around like, well, do I have to show them the house if they have a buyer broker agreement? So Joanna's got a buyer broker agreement with the client calls them, I signed. I see you're working with somebody, she's like, Joanna Rao, where is she? Or she's scuba diving this weekend. She can't show me the house. You still need to get an agreement because now you're down a slippery slope. They're working with somebody who's not in the area, right? So, you know, something of that nature, I'd go back to your broker and say, what do you want me to do in this case?
Yeah, I know that on a lot of the legal calls, it's about the intent. Is your intent to work with the buyer and represent the buyer?
Right.
Then the agreement's needed. I mean, if you're doing a favor and being a door key as a listing agent for somebody who is going to work with a buyer's agent and has a buyer broker agreement signed.
Right, and that was a conversation. They said, well, in this case, they said, well, the agent's not there. You know, it's a one-time showing agreement. That agent, though they're working together, it may be exclusive, but they're not in the picture. So, I mean, it's gonna be interesting as we go through here and work through this process, but they ultimately had somebody in their office sign a one-time showing agreement for it, and basically built in the compensation to be a referral. And called the agent and said, listen, I know you're scuba diving. Your client wants to see this house. How do you want to handle this? Would you pay me a referral or accept a referral agreement on this? So that's how they worked through it. But again, there's going to be circumstances where people are going to be, it's going to be new. You know, it's kind of like some of these shows, The Amazing Race, for example, is always when I actually applied to be on it with my sister, and which would have been scary because neither one of us are athletic. So, but you know, you have this thing and everything's new to these people, you know, you have to find these clues and stuff. And I think that it's very similar. This is a path that nobody's been down before, right? So when they brought that to me last week, they're like, well, this is the situation. They got an exclusive buyer agreement. That person's not around, can't physically show it. I can't show it. Can I tell them I can't show it? And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with telling them you need to bring your agent.
Yeah, you know, and we've had this situation a lot before, but just with our listings, right? We get the call all the time where they say, hey, they've got it currently listed with somebody else, but they don't like them, right? The listing agent isn't doing the job. And now they can't get a hold of them to terminate the contract. What do I do? Can you do it for me? Can you terminate it so that they can move forward with me? It's a lot of the situations that we've had before, because you have listing agreements, which are employment contracts, and now it's just on the flip side.
Exactly. It's an employment contract.
Let's see, I think we have another question here. What was the fourth type of commission you discussed? So you're getting it from
Seller to seller broker, buyer broker, seller, buyer broker, seller to buyer concession, or directly out of the buyer's pocket. Those are the 4 ways.
Okay. I think that's all of the questions for now. So do you want to jump into our other updates and tools that we have?
Sure.
Okay. So talk to everybody a little bit about RESTB.AI. I know you started to talk about it earlier and what it does.
Yeah, so RESTB.AI is our artificial intelligence system we brought in. We are going to have enhancements on this down the road, but you've got some great opportunity here to really make your property sell. So, you know, everybody's worried about how am I going to tell them what the commission is? And somebody asked me, can I put it on the tag that goes in the lockbox? You can, it's off MLS, you know, put it on the key tag if you want, right? They said, can I text them back when they set up the appointment? I get the notification on my phone. Can I hit their phone number and text them the compensation? Yeah, you can. It's outside of MLS, right? Can I put in the flyer that's on the countertop in the house? Yes, you can. It's off MLS. Can I call them and tell them what it is? Yes, you can. It's off MLS. So you have all these ways to get your compensation out there, but I always look at this from, if I was practicing today, what would I do differently? And RESTB.AI always comes to mind, because when you go in here to the photos, you know, we want everybody to buy a house. It's American dream, and ADA compliant websites are a real thing. And I know we had a bunch of attorneys attacking all industries on ADA compliant websites, which means if I'm hearing impaired, right, I should have, you know, I should be able to see captions and pictures and things like that. If I'm vision impaired, I should be able to have a reader on my Google, which they have a plugin on Chrome to listen to the description of the pictures. The problem in real estate is we seldom put descriptions in pictures. So somebody that is completely, you know, vision impaired, which I got a friend of mine, her name's Kathy. I grew up with her in Wisconsin. She was my next door neighbor. And she went to the hospital, came out of a surgery, and could not see. Wow. She's been blind since she was 17 years old. She had just got her license and is now completely blind. And her and I had this conversation probably back 15 years ago, before this technology was here. But she says, you know, I wish there was a way I can go through and see websites, because blind people see with their ears and their other senses. And so this resonates to me that, you know, RESTB is something that is the ability to upload content around photos. So if you want to show them kind of how this comes on.
So I'm sure a lot of you have done this before. This is the input section of the MLS when you're getting ready to list something. In here, manage photos. It looks very much the same. We haven't moved your cheese. However, there is a new button here for RESTB.AI if you haven't put in a photo in the past couple of months. It comes automatically checked. If you don't want the AI in here, then you can simply uncheck it and not use it. But now when you go ahead and upload photos, I'll grab a few examples for you. Well, what did it just do? So now when I put these photos in here, you can see that the type of photo is automatically being selected, along with the description is automatically being written. So this here is a kitchen. So we got kitchen with light wood type flooring, decorative backsplash, stone countertops, stainless steel appliances. It's gone through and read this entire photo. I'll open this up so that you guys can see it a little bit better. But it's chosen the type and then it wrote the whole description here based on what it can see in this photo. And it's done that for every single one. And you saw how fast that was. We're not on the fastest internet either. So it makes the process a lot easier. And then again, to Jason's point, we now are ADA compliant. It's got a full description in here. I do suggest, because it's AI, go through, double check the captions, make sure that they are correct. Make sure there's no kind of fair housing violation in there. I haven't seen anything yet for fair housing in the photos. I know a lot of people outside of the MLS are using AI to write their property descriptions, and it has stuff in there like great for a small family or children or walkability, and those things are fair housing violations. The photos, we haven't seen them too much, but still it is up to you to double check that what it's being put in here is correct.
Yeah, and I'll just make a couple comments on this. So when I talk about marketing and other ways to enhance your listing, I talked to Bacasa, gave them a shout out because I love the idea of having a floor plan for buyers. I think, we talk about the business has shifted, the market shifted. We're not 21 and 22 and 20 with houses flying off the market. Things are sitting longer. The little things really do work. And talking with somebody at the conference last week, specifically about RESTB.AI, was that the fact that they sat through a presentation, they heard us talk about it, they implemented it in their business, and it was ironic. The person that bought the house was actually, husband was blind. And he was the one that brought it. It was the only photo, the only house he had that was kind of like done with RESTB.AI and could read him the picture descriptions. But he was one that said, honey, I found the house. And she laughed at him. She said, how did you find the house? And she said, no, listen, this is a good one, because she's trying to explain what it looks like to him. But that's what actually, and so that's a testament to what that could be. Do read it. It is AI. By the way, side note, if you are using AI to do your descriptions, you can, and again, you are ultimately responsible what goes in here.
Yeah.
So don't put something in here that is not right. If it says wood like flooring and it's not, and it's tile, change it to wood like tile flooring. Put the tile word in there. But they, if you put in the prompt on AI that says, please take in consideration the, fair housing rules in the US, it will help with that process. So,
yeah. We got a few questions in here as well.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Technically, a super is tied to the MLS. So is that really acceptable? It's about the technology that's tied to the MLS. So if it's attached to the key, it's not something that is tied in virtually.
So yeah, so again, we're not using the MLS to negotiate or start negotiating or have it come out of there. It's not tied to the electronic system. So they're not setting up a code and on their Supra app getting the commission. It's on a hard key code that's there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we look at, is it defensible? Yes, it's not in the MLS. Can they make an argument that was tied as one of our services? Yes. But we didn't use the electronic components and communication to communicate the actual commission.
It's a good question though, because when this first came out, we had a lot of people calling in saying, okay, well, I'll just put it in showing time. Part of my showing instructions is, I'm offering 5 bananas. And that's the part that you can't do because it's tied into the electrical component.
Correct. So that's why they felt that was defensible on that.
Okay. The next one is, I had to hop in 10 minutes late because this link they didn't receive the link. Can I re-listen to this? If you send me an email, I will get you a link. It says you're anonymous. So go ahead and email Joanna, that's JOANNA @rpcra.org. And I will get you a link.
All right. So that's the RESTB.AI piece. It's easy. You can click the blue button and turn it off. But again, we're looking about marketing properties right now. I would use every tool that my broker or the MLS was providing to make sure that I took the time to get the most eyeballs on my house. So I love, people, you were in the dynamic session at Florida Realtors on Matterport. So again, people are using different things to kind of make their listings kind of pop. we're giving you guys the 2D, not the 3D, the two-dimensional flat floor plan for RESTB or Cubic Casa, or RESTB, the Cubic Casa. Which again, this is unlimited to you. We cut a great deal with them for you guys to be able to put floor plans in. When I was using a Matterport photographer, this was $65 is what they charged me.
It's a good, decent add-on. And they do have, at a discounted rate, you can upgrade these floor plans to like the 3D, to the dollhouse, to colored. You kind of get a little example right here of what you're getting, but there is availability to upgrade that.
There is, and it's not expensive. It's $9.95, $10 for one, and then it's like whatever for the other. But
Yeah.
and then you can also put in the actual sizes if you upgrade it. But it's a great starting point, and we're super excited to have them as a partner on our MLS here, working with us. You know, our mission and our MLS committee, and give them a big shout out for everything that they've done. They worked really hard this year to make sure that the rules and regulations were right, to bring some of this new stuff in this year, as well as the group from last year. And they've done an amazing job. But part of the focus is how can we bring more tools that our members need to help move properties into the MLS. And that's what we've worked on. So we've got .loop coming up, which would be an add-on. Some people use, like you said, app files or DocuSign. .loop, just some users for it. We're doing that as well. Again, just adding things in there that, you know, we can bring to the actual table. So
I do want to point out, I know it was in the description for this class, something new that should be on your dashboard as of this past week is the learning lab down here. So anything that is a CoreLogic tool will be in this learning lab. So CoreLogic is Matrix, the One Home portal. We bring you in a lot of other tools that aren't Matrix related, but you'll find a good amount of these tools that are in here. So if you feel that you're stuck with certain things in the MLS, or again, One Home's brand new, we get a lot of calls about this. There are a lot of videos out here for you to be able to watch, and they are broken out into these little sections here, but they aren't long videos. They're short little clips. So they're very specifically pointed to maybe you just need help with the matrix search or a listing input, things like that. You have access to this entire learning lab now on your dashboard.
yeah, and this is excellent. There's a lot of questions you can ask, but you know, if you can find the answer on here and learn how to do it, I think it's a great tool for everybody to have. And we'll be launching the new Royal Palm Coast Realtor Association website in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and on there, you'll have some of these videos on these MLS Mondays and some other short takes we're doing. For that, we've started about a year ago, the Did You Know? So we've got that. We're going to be bringing out a bunch of Did You Knows on some of the commission things and those things. You guys have that information as well. We've got the MLS Monthly that goes out. So if you're not getting, here's the thing, we've been doing buyer broker agreements, been doing broker office visits. Sean and I and some of the staff here, your leadership team, have been going out to talk to different brokers by invite. And it's not, you know, it's everybody's included. You know, we've been in offices that were super small. We've been in offices that were super big. And all you gotta do is contact myself to go ahead and get that scheduled. We're willing to come out and do a kind of a small visit, answer any questions. But during this process of doing this, you know, the people we found out were unsubscribing inadvertently, not knowing, from our weekly update, which has a ton of information in there. They were unsubscribing from our MLS Monthly, which has tons of content in there. But they didn't realize it. So we've been signing people back up to these visits that were completely kind of in the dark because they unsubscribed. Because sometimes if you unsubscribe to, and we use email, constant contact, yeah, an email generator, sometimes you opt out of that, you opt out of all of them.
So if you aren't getting a lot of emails from the association, the MLS department, if you don't see those regularly, do email marketing@rpcra.org and ask them to re-add you to the list.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of people re-add people.
Yeah.
That they didn't realize they didn't get. They're like, why don't you guys do this? But there's a lot of information coming out. Just take the time to read it. And in our climate of our business today, it's more important to read everything make sure you're in the know, join as many classes as you can, those types of things. So,
Mhm.
all right,
I think we've got all of our questions answered
awesome.
on the bottom there.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate you joining us today for the MLS Monday.